All right, guys, we got Mr. Joe Miles on this podcast episode today. And if that name sounds familiar, then that's because he is with Asio and also the Mission Whitetail podcast. This dude is, if you could see, and if you're watching the video, you'll see his wall. This man knows what he's doing. So what's going on, Joe? How you been, man?
Man, I'm doing great, buddy. I hope you are. I appreciate you having me on. It's always awesome to talk with like-minded guys and talk about deer and tactics and all the stuff that we love, man. And you being in the Southeast makes it even better. That's obviously where I grew up and still love to hunt the Congaree River Swamp even today. And man, I just thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it. Humbled to be here.
Yeah, man, of course. I've been wanting to get you on for quite a while. Especially with Asio coming on and, supporting the podcast and all that, I thought what better person to have on. And, I'm excited. I'm really excited. So I guess for those who don't know you that maybe live under a rock, could you give us a little background on what got you into hunting? Clearly on your wall, you picked it up pretty well.
Well, I appreciate that. So yeah, I guess the bio, my dad it was a huge hunter, still is. I grew up in that family. My dad, I told this story last night to some guys. So guys, if you're listening to multiple podcasts and you hear this story a few times, I apologize, but it's exactly kind of the highlights of my childhood that I remember. I can remember waking up in the middle of the woods, being a little teeny guy in a sleeping bag and looking out and just being in the middle of nowhere and a piece of candy hitting me in the top of the head and looking up, my dad's in a tree. He would take me when I was that little. And so, that was my dad. I can remember we used to, the stands that we would hunt in the swamp on the Savannah River, there would be railroad ties nailed into the sides of the tree, and then there'd be a 2x4 up between a fork and the tree. And obviously the steps or the pegs were too far for a little guy, 4 or 5 years old, for me to climb up. So I would literally wrap my arms around his neck like a monkey, and then he would climb up the tree with me on his back, and then I'd sit on his lap for the entire afternoon or morning or whatever it was. So that was my dad. He had a crazy work ethic, was ahead of his time in hunting, and lit the fire under me when I was really, really little, and just that was my life. And it was sports and football. It was sports and hunting, football, baseball, and hunting, and that's all we did. And so that was, I was very, very fortunate to grow up with a dad like that took care of me and taught me the ropes and passed on his passion, and I took it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, man, that sounds like the dream childhood, if you ask me.
It was.
I didn't even get into hunting until about 5 years ago. I mean, I've always been into it, but I, grew up in that family where you had like one uncle that would hunt, and, I'm originally from Illinois. So he would go out on like probably one weekend a year with all his buddies. And I remember probably being, 4 or 5 years old, being like, can I go with you? And he'd be like, no, it's not for kids. And I never knew what he meant until I grew up. And then I was like, oh, I know what you were doing. Y'all just went out there and had a few beers, and you didn't want to see me or want me to see you like that. So yeah, it's crazy, like seeing where, like hearing all these, background stories from the guests that we've had on, and like just seeing what y'all have done with the passion of hunting, and so, I mean, it's inspiring, to be honest, because especially being so new to it, it's good to have guys like you that, will make content and put out, really good podcast episodes, products, all that stuff. So, I mean, it's, what y'all are doing is very inspiring. So I just wanted to tell you that.
No, appreciate that. Thank you very much, man. That's awesome.
Awesome. Cool. Well, so before we dive into the whole arrow thing, because I've been watching a bunch of your videos. Yeah. Everyone that knows this podcast knows I'm obsessed with 3 things: broadheads, arrow setups, and vanes. Yep. So before we dive down that rabbit hole, what Asio, what's the whole history with that? Because I heard about it through Don Higgins, and he was talking about the camo pattern, how it was so different from like all the other stuff. And I looked it up one day. I was like, oh yeah, that looks a little different, but I didn't know anything about it. So what's kind of the history with that? Like where did that start and how
Yeah.
did it is now?
Yep. So I got to a point where I got to do some kind of mountain hunting, some sheep and goat, and some elk hunting. Out in the West and up in the Rockies, Alaska, and a lot of those areas require some really switched on stuff. You got to have really good clothing, or it can be life and death in some of those situations, especially Wrangell Mountains up in the glaciers in Alaska, places like that. You've got to have really good clothes. And I grew up hunting like the Michelin Man. I had 15 layers of cotton on and maybe an outer layer of fleece, and I still froze to death. And even in South Carolina, in 25-degree weather, I was freezing. Feet were frozen, and finally got exposed to some really high-end gear, and just was like, oh my God, I had no idea this stuff was out there. And I started using it in the whitetail woods, and I just was not happy with how loud it was, and I was not happy with the camo pattern. And I said, if I could ever figure out a camo pattern that actually worked from South Carolina to Florida to Texas to Alberta to Kansas and everywhere in between, that really worked in all the whitetail range in all the seasons, I ought to start a line and fill that gap. I really saw a gap there between the really premium high speed stuff and a great whitetail camouflage pattern. So I just kind of filed that away and was thinking, if I ever do that, then if I can ever get the camo pattern nailed, I'm gonna start that. And I've told this story, and anybody that follows Asio has heard it. So guys, I apologize if you've heard this story as well. But I'm literally, I guess it was 2018, 2019. Walking to pull a stand in October. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. I was going to pull a stand, and two great horned owls got in a fight or breeding or whatever they were doing above me. One of them flew into a oak tree, and you know how owls do, they just vanish, when they're so quiet and they're just camouflaged like crazy. Flew into a tree, vanished. Walked over to him. He started doing a little head bob, and he flew into a pine or a different tree, and he vanished again. And I said, man, that camo is insane. And I walked over to him, and he flew off. And, I started thinking about it, and I said, man, that is an awesome predator. That's an awesome camo pattern. I wonder what the eyesight, like the scientific eyesight of deer, rats, mice, squirrels, rabbits. I wonder how similar their eyesight is. And I had no background in biology or anything, but I'm pretty resourceful. So got home, called a couple of veterinary friends of mine, and got them kind of to get with some biologists at the zoo and some guys that really understood ungulate eyesight and how animals see. And lo and behold, like tree squirrels and those type animals have exactly the same type eyesight as a white-tailed deer. They have dichromatic eyesight. And the prey animals, the eyes are set up the same on the head. And so I said, okay, I'm not a rocket scientist here, and I'm a pretty simple Southern boy, but I got a natural predator, ambush predator, that hunts out of trees, that's hunting animals that have the same eyesight that me as a human is hunting. And those type owls are across all the whitetail range, and they don't change colors. In August, they're the same color in a green canopy as they are in January in Ohio in a completely barren canopy. That owl never changes colors. And I said, okay, nature knows what it's doing. So if I want a really high speed switched on camo pattern, I need to mimic that owl. And that's exactly what we did. We got some really high end, high resolution pictures of owl feathers, their patterns, their shades, the depth, the shadows, the coloring, and we developed the Asio Raptor camo pattern. And then that was the hard part. The easy part was getting the technology with the clothing. It's out there and can be purchased. And so that's what we did, is we got the highest end, quietest fabrics, the best cutting and sewing that we could get. So we had, Primaloft insulation, which is the highest weight to heat ratio insulation that you can have, windproof liners. So if you're in Kansas and 45 degree temperatures or 20-degree temperatures and there's a 20-mile-an-hour wind, the wind's not going to cut through you. And then we developed the line, put our camo pattern on it, then tested it in Alberta and Kansas, and then in South Carolina in August. So we've got stuff from early season all the way to late season, and launched it, and we're going into our 4th year, and we're up to over 10,000 customers, and it just every year it's growing and growing and growing, and guys that bow hunt really seem to like it, and we couldn't be more excited with where it's headed.
Yeah, man. I mean, when I first heard about it, like I said, it was from Don Higgins, and he's telling, on his podcast, he's like, yeah, I've got, this new camo pattern, and it really seems to be doing the trick. And so when I saw that it was, because I've been using the same Walmart stuff for the past 5 years, and I'm not going to name any brands, but it done okay. But I mean, I've hunted from the ground in a ground blind. Like, I've been in trees and I haven't been seen, but I've been seen a few times. And the biggest thing for me was the fact that, y'all based it off of an owl. And I've seen owls in trees, and exactly what you're talking about, where you see it fly across, it lands in the tree, and it's gone. And there's no hole in the tree. So you're like, how? What did you just do? And so that kind of intrigued me. And then I looked into it, and I've been a fan ever since I found y'all, honestly. I'm actually planning on getting some of the new, I guess, the lightweight hoodie and pants before season here. Because, I mean, one thing I did notice, like you said, high quality material and stuff like that. Like, I've moved a couple times in my stand, and I've heard it myself. And I'm like, man, if the deer is anywhere near me, it's not gonna show up, because it's just too, it's too noisy.
Sure.
And I'm excited to try it out. I mean, I should have got it a long time ago. Life gets in the way.
No, I get it. No, I get it, man. Well, it's definitely there, and we really appreciate it. So, yeah, we've got some new stuff coming this year. It's completely different than what's out there now. We got some collar designs, fabric designs that are coming, and that's kind of where we are now as a company, is trying to stay ahead with technology, because technology in the textile industry is improving every year, and we want to be on the front end of that. We don't want to be copying people, and that's kind of where we are as a company now, is trying to continue bringing the technology to market, and the design, the features. We've been doing this bow hunting stuff for well over 30 years, and there's things that work for you and things that can actually hurt you. And so that's, we really pay attention to our design and how it's going to benefit us bow hunters.
Gotcha. Something that crossed my mind a couple minutes ago when you were talking about like the design and everything. As you know, down here in the South, we have good cover till about, what would you say, November?
Yep. 100%.
Well, something I ran into last year was that so early season, no issues, right? Could get up, bunch of trees around, and everything's fine. Come November, I couldn't find a tree that I could get in where I was covered. So have you, I'm assuming you tested it, but would you say that like the pattern that y'all have kind of blends in with the tree better than just like the standard, foliage?
Yes, it's no doubt about it. And let me back up, just a little bit. I'm not going to argue with the guy that says, look, I can go out in my blue jeans and my flannel shirt and kill a deer. It happens. It happened forever. Guys did it. And before that, guys did it in loincloths with spears. So technology, the flannel came along and blue jeans came along, and guys did it in that. And then, Realtree and mossy oak came along, and that kind of revolutionized things, and guys killed it in that. And then you get the digital patterns out there. And, I think a lot of the patterns have been over-engineered now, and they're more for the person than they are for actually the hunting. And we've kind of gone the opposite way. But not about that. The point is, you can kill a deer in a plaid shirt and blue jeans or a white t-shirt or whatever. I'm not going to argue that. Where a good camouflage pattern sets itself apart is with movement. Deer see movement.
Yep.
And when you are moving to draw your bow, or you've been sitting there for 6 hours and you turn to look over your left shoulder and he's standing right there, if you've got good camo on, you've got a much better chance of him not picking you off than if you are in blue jeans and a white t-shirt. Good camo, it's edges, it's small things. And if you want to hunt in good quality clothing so you can sit there regardless of what camo it is, you ought to have good camo on it, because it is going to give you an advantage. There is a reason that every natural ambush predator on this planet is camouflage. a leopard, a bobcat, a coyote, a wolf, an owl, a hawk. If you look at the natural ambush predators, a lion, mountain lion, they are camouflaged naturally, and there's a reason for that. That's just not out of happenstance. So for somebody to say camo won't work or is not needed, I do have an issue with that, because I know in nature, and I know with my own experiences that it absolutely can help.
Yeah, and what's crazy, I think one of the reasons, aside from everything else you just said, that I like so much is because y'all really did do it different. Because like you were saying, every single predator, no matter what it is, has camo. And I've always kind of wondered, like, why haven't more companies gone that route? I mean, I understand the whole foliage and looking like a tree and all that, that's fine. But if a deer sees a certain tree every single day, and then you get up there and you have the same pattern, but you move, the deer's going to pick you off like that.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So it kind of, I think what y'all are doing with it is a revolutionary thing, because you're sort of taking a different approach to it, where rather than looking like something that's, not, I mean, it's not really designed to be camouflaged. You're taking something that is designed to be camouflaged and turning it into something that a person can use,
Yep.
So yeah, I'm excited to use it. I really am, because I'm planning on hunting out of a tree a lot more this year. I finally pretty much got over my fear of heights.
Good deal.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I'm very excited. I can't wait. I'll probably be ordering it in the next 3 to 4 weeks or so.
Sweet.
So going from that, well, actually, no, you know what? I got one more question about it.
Yep.
Where do you see Asio in 10 years? Because I'll grow up, and I feel like the sky's the limit right now.
Yeah, I mean that's our goal is really to get it in as many bow hunters' hands as we can, because it's a business for us, right? And we're passionate about it, but I really do deep down inside feel like it's going the pattern and the quality of the clothing is going to help guys be more successful. And if you can help people, that's a legacy play for us. I can't tell you the number of DMs or emails or text messages I get of guys with their first really big deer in Asio. And man, that is, you go from walking in the woods and seeing two owls, getting it on or fighting or whatever they were doing, to guys sending you a picture of a 190 in Illinois, their biggest deer, wearing a camouflage pattern that you put on clothing. And man, it's humbling, and it's really, it's a cherished moment that I really, really appreciate, and proud of having helped a small bit in that guy's success.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is that I should have gotten Asio 2 years ago when I saw a booner on public, turned around on me and was gone. So I think I realized one of my major mistakes there. But speaking of big deer and stuff like that, man, you have what, about 60, maybe more, giant bucks?
Somewhere around there. Yeah. I've been doing it a long time, man.
Dude, when I first saw that, because I saw a picture of that, I think it was last night I messaged you, and I'm like, is that your trophy room? And you're like, yeah, it is. I'm like, dude, that looks like a piece of heaven.
Yeah, I like just coming in here and vegging out for sure.
I'd live in there. I would do things to make my wife mad just so I could go to sleep.
Yeah.
So I was watching some of your hunting videos. There was one you had, I think it was 3 different bucks, and these guys were giants. I think one of the deer was called the 29, right?
Well, they were all killed on the 29.
Oh, okay.
It was 3 bucks back to back killed on 29 acres in Illinois. That's right.
Gotcha. Do you hunt up in Illinois a lot? Is that like
I used to hunt a lot in Illinois. Now more Kansas, Kentucky, Ohio, a lot here at home, and try to get up to Canada and down to Mexico. I really like the Mexico stuff. It's rut for them, but it's December. That South Texas, Mexico, I love the weather, and the rut action there is insane. I mean, it's almost daily snort, wheezing, grunting, fighting, chasing. It's just action packed. So I really, really enjoy that. It's different, because there, it's rattle the corn bucket and you're feeding Senderos and, they're coming out to feed. So it's totally different than, a DIY hunt in Ohio or Kansas or whatever it may be. So it's a different world, but it, so yeah, that's kind of what I do. I don't hunt. The question was Illinois, and I do want to get back into Illinois, but it's been a few years.
Gotcha. Yeah. So you mentioned Kansas. They just got that new law, right? Where you can't have cameras on public
on public. Yep, that's right. No trail cameras on public ground. That's right.
Do you hunt any public out there?
Not in Kansas. I have in other states. I've hunted public in Illinois, Mississippi. In Kansas, I've got a real good buddy that's got access to a bunch of private, and I kind of pick up a farm from him each year and hunt it. So yeah, and it's getting harder and harder to get drawn out there. I've been real lucky and drawn the last 3 years, but I'm sure next year that I won't be so fortunate. But I did get drawn this year, so I'll be back out there.
Gotcha. So you have to, because I've never hunted out of state. I mean, I'm planning on going to Colorado in the next 2 to 3 years. But so when you go like to your buddy's place, you have to still get drawn for a tag. You can't just pay a out of state fee.
No, in Kansas you have to get drawn. You apply for a non-resident, either sex tag or antler tag, and you have to apply for certain units, like unit 10, 12, 14, 3, whatever it is. The whole state's divided into units, and you apply and you either get drawn or you don't.
Wow. Dude, hearing that compared to what we have down here in Georgia and South Carolina, that is insane. I mean, because what's y'all's tag system in South Carolina? Isn't it like $3 and like 12 does or something like that?
Yeah, so we get $3 and then you get 2 bonus bucks. So we can shoot $5 here and then 7, 10 does, something like that. It used to be unlimited bucks. I mean, my dad shot 52 bucks in a row without missing a deer. Now that was over multiple seasons. That wasn't all in one season, but yeah, he killed 52 in a row without missing. And he missed it. I think I was with him when he missed his 52nd deer. It was right at dark, and I think he shot over it. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, it would be nothing for him to kill 15, 16 bucks in a season.
That is insane. I don't even think I see that many bucks in a season.
Yeah, I'm telling you, he was an animal, no doubt about it.
That's crazy. Because like one thing that I've noticed, and out here I've got 2 public land WMAs that are within 10 minutes of the house. So I've been kind of putting a lot more focus on that. But I've got 2 private spots that early season, it's on fire. I mean, right now it's kind of dead. I haven't really seen anything worth note yet, but we still got, 2-3 months. But so I guess what I'm asking is, have you noticed like around November time that they just kind of disappear?
Here in South Carolina?
Yeah.
Man, most of my November is the last few years has been out of state. But the properties I hunt here, I mentioned earlier, the Congaree River Swamp, and it's thousands of acres of cutovers and hardwoods and pine forest and river swamp, and I haven't noticed that November they vanish. When I have come home and hunted, they certainly change. Like July, August, I'm going to find them up on the hill of the swamp, in the ag. And then as the ag gets taken out, the acorns start dropping, they dump back into the swamp. So they definitely will change locations, but I think once they're down in the swamp, they're there, and you can, I've killed them in December, I've killed them in November, and, been able to, run a lot of trail cameras and get the bucks moving a lot further than they were early season, in different locations.
Yeah, because over the spots I've got, aside from the public, I mean, I'm kind of doing it Seek One style, where it's like 7, 8 acres, small tracts of land. I mean, the main one that I go to is 7 acres that my grandparents own, about 8 acres next door, and then about 200 acres of just open hardwoods, just right behind all of that. And last year I noticed that, it was on fire up until end of October. And maybe it was because I was going in too much. I think that's kind of what it was. But dude, they just disappeared. I saw one deer from November to January. And it
Yeah,
was,
and it could be food. There are a lot of things. Human intrusion is the number one thing. You'll hear Don Higgins talk about that over and over and over again, and that is the number one. The number one factor is putting pressure on deer. I mean, especially mature bucks, they figure that out quick, and it's something you just have to be cognizant of. But I would rather have the right 4 acres than the wrong 800 or 8,000. Like we talked about earlier, that 29-acre tract in Illinois was only 29 acres, but I shot a 164, a 186, and a 183 back to back to back. And there would have been a big one in there every single year. I ended up losing that place. But it was a spot that literally, like, I hunted 2 days the first year, maybe 1 day the second year, and maybe 3 days the third year. It never went in there, only to pull camera cards because we didn't have text cameras back then. So only to pull camera cards, and waited for the absolute right weather, right wind. And those were the days that I would hunt. So those small properties can be absolutely deadly, but you've got to only hunt them when conditions are right. And there's a deer coming through there you want to kill.
yeah, I think having you say that, T-Bone say that, Jay Maxwell say that, just everybody that knows what they're doing basically tell me, dude, only go in when it's right. That's probably what I'm going to do this year. Cause it's really hard though, cause you get that bug, like you wait all year to hunt, and then season comes up and you're like, oh, well, we're not doing anything this weekend. I could probably go.
Yeah, blow up the public, man. Go blow up the public. Get the bug out of your system. You never know. You might stumble into a giant in there. Go in there, make mistakes, learn. Have at it, learn the public, and blow it up, and just get that out of your system, and then save your good spots for when it's right.
Yeah, I mean, so the main public spot that I hunt at, and I don't mean to kind of harp on all this too long, but there's one spot that is 200 yards from the parking area. And 2 years in a row now, I've seen, so in 2021, I saw the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life, that one I just told you about. And then last year I had 5 different shooter bucks on camera. And so I'm like, dude, that right there is the spot. It's just every time I've gone in, I haven't seen them. But I think, this coming year, because we have 3 weeks of bow season on that spot, and then the other WMA has, I think, another 2 or 3 weeks. So I'll probably take your advice and just go do that, and then sort of keep an eye on the main spot.
Yeah.
Because that I was after over there didn't even show up till, I think, beginning of October. So, it's kind of not worth it. I mean, yeah, the deer behind me on the wall over here, I shot him second weekend of season, and that was my first bow buck. I mean, but after that, everything started going downhill. So I think I'm gonna have to listen to y'all, because I'm being stubborn and not seeing nothing.
Yeah, there you go, man. Well, I know you'll get it done. I can tell you're hungry, and already got some in the bag, so I know it's going to keep happening for sure.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time, and whatever God's plan is His plan. So I can't argue. So before we get into the arrow stuff, because I'm itching to hear your opinion on all this, and I'm sure you get this question all the time. What's the story on your biggest deer? Like, what is your biggest deer, and what's the story leading up to it?
Well, I've killed a couple 200-inch mule deer. There's one right there. That's a 209 mule deer. Biggest whitetail, 186. He's right there.
Okay.
180. I've killed 4 over 180. And I think 8 over 170, but 186 is my top end buck. And I shot him in Illinois on that 29-acre tract, and have got insane video footage of him coming across that little CRP field. And he had a big fly. He's got a big flyer off the back.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah, and he laid his head back, scratched his back with it, and stood out in the sun. And so that was a buck that I got pictures of, and multiple pictures of that deer, and just waited until let's see, I killed him on like November 2nd, I believe. I'd have to go back and look because it's been a while, but we had a real high pressure system move in, and I'm a big believer in that overhead moon. The Adam Hayes, my buddy, owns the Deer Hunter's Moon Guide, and we hunted with that thing years before he bought it. And anyway, we had an overhead moon for the next 3 days, high pressure system. Temperatures dropping, cold front coming. I needed a northeast wind, was the absolute perfect wind. And northeast is a little weird, northwest is more common, but got everything that I needed. And so I went in there about 2:00 in the afternoon and got set up. And man, I think it was 4:30 in the afternoon. He stood up in the CRP and I saw him. And he was walking, he was going to go out into this old abandoned cattle pasture and then out into the ag. And so I snort wheezed at him and called to him some, and he bristled up and like big mature bucks do, he just took his time. He laid his ears back and he looked in my direction. He started coming to me. He gets 70 yards out. He stops in that CRP and just looks and looks and looks. And he's obviously too close to call at again, or he'd have pinned me in the tree. And he's just figuring everything out. And he starts to close a different distance again, but he turns and walks into some privet or honeysuckle. And when he got in that honeysuckle where he couldn't see me, I grunted really softly again, and he popped out on this little walking path and came right under me, and I shot him. So it was a just a perfect storm, a great hunt. And they certainly always don't work like that. I've snort wheezed at bucks before too, and they've run. So it worked out that day.
Yeah, well, that whole snort wheezing and grunting at him thing, that I kind of want to touch on that because I've had a little bit of success with that. That big one I was telling you about on public, I had a grunt tube in the can, and I was listening to some podcast on Southern Outdoorsman. I forget the guy's name, but he said that what he'll do is he'll grunt, like kind of do like a whole sequence, left to right, and then he'll hit the can once or twice. And he said he's had that work a million times for him. So I did that, and then that big one showed up, and if I was facing the other way, he'd have been dead. But unfortunately, he came in behind me, and it's a whole long story. But that I've always wondered though, because I've tried the same thing in different spots, and it's never worked.
Yeah. So I'm not a blind caller. Like I don't just sit up there and get bored and go, I'm going to rattle, or I don't even take rattling horns with me. I take a grunt tube and then I snort wheeze with my mouth, and it's always only as a last resort. Like I see the deer that I'm after. And those encounters are so rare, and he's out of range, he's walking away, he's going a different direction, and then I'll throw that at him. But I'm normally start with a really small grunt, and just kind of see what he's doing, and you can kind of get a feel for it, whether he's going to be interested at all, or if you're wasting your time. And if you're wasting your time, I stop. I don't force it. If I grunt and he kind of bristles up or rakes a tree or something like that, then I'm like, okay, he's dominant. He wants to play, and then maybe hit him with a snort wheeze or some more aggressive grunts. And that's all I do calling wise. And it has to be something that I can see, and I'm really soft with it to start with, just to see how the deer reacts.
Gotcha. So do you change your tactics up like when you're hunting in South Carolina? Because down here, unless I don't know the spots that you're hunting down here, but at least where I'm at, it is thick, and you can barely see 50 yards in front of you. So is it like that for you up there?
Yeah, I do very, very, very little calling. I think I've never snort wheezed at a deer in South Carolina. Maybe I ought to try it because we've got dominant bucks, and I've heard them snort wheeze before here. But I have grunted in a few bucks that were out of range. So I've always got a grunt tube. Not early season, but when we get into the pre-rut, I've always got a grunt call with me, and I will absolutely use it.
Gotcha. So are you do you use mock scrapes? Have you
absolutely. Oh yeah, 100%. Yep.
Gotcha. What time frame would you say down here? Because obviously Illinois and all that other stuff is totally different than here. I mean, we basically are hunting southern coos as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kurt Geyer told me about that one, so I had to give him a little shout out. But what time do you start putting mock scrapes out? Because I think I started doing it late to mid-August last year on the private spot. I think mid-October on public. And I mean, they were, if I had my phone out, I'd have had, you know, a video of two bucks basically standing up, trying to get at it, and just a bunch of deer really hitting it. So around what time frame of the year would you say you start your mock scrapes?
I'm putting some in this weekend, and we're
You
in
are?
June. Yeah, in June. Yep, I'll put them in this weekend. I won't put cameras or anything on them yet. I'll wait till July to put cameras in, but I'll go ahead and get the limb heights right, get a big, heavy tooth rake, get them raked out. So yeah, I'll be putting some in this weekend. I put some in with Bobby Worthington in Kentucky 3 weeks ago. So yeah, we'll get them put in early, man, and you know, get out of there. I've got to actually go to Kentucky and cut that camera on. I've got one camera that I'm going to have to go out there and turn on because I didn't want my batteries to die. But yeah, so summers, get the mock scrapes in. You know, I think up until middle of August you're good. I have a few rope scrapes. I just kind of started messing with those, and the key to rope scrapes is making sure that hemp rope has weathered, because it's got a real bad chemical smell, and it can take 6 months for it to get that chemical smell out. You can speed that process up by having like a tote filled up with baking soda and water and let them soak in it for 3 days, and that'll help, but it still doesn't do it. The best thing you can do with that stuff is to do that process and then hang those things where you want them in like February. And then by the time season rolls around, they'll be good. But you take a piece of hemp rope, and in South Carolina we can't use real scent. You know, we have to use synthetic scents. We can't use against the law to use real deer scent. So we have to use synthetic. But I don't even use scent. I don't scent up any of mine. I let the deer do it.
Okay.
You know, once a buck hits a scrape or a rope scrape and puts his orbital gland on there, he pees in the scrape, it's off and running. And if you've got your scrape in the right place and you got the branch that he's going to want to hit at the right height, a big mature buck's not going to walk by there and not hit it. He's going to hit it. And once he gets it started, then it's just, you know, repetitive.
Gotcha. So have you noticed, because I've looked a lot into like what Troy Pottinger does and some of the stuff that, and I know how people feel about this, but some of the stuff that like Mitch Rompola used to say back in the day, and about scrapes and all that stuff. Do you notice more activity at night than during the day? Because I've heard that.
Depends on where they are.
Okay.
You walk up on an acorn flat and see a big scrape, and you know, you get all excited and I'm going to hunt there, and then you throw your camera out there, and you know, everything is at night, right? They're hitting that scrape, and it's because they're not getting there till night. You know, you find a really thick bedding area that's got scrapes right on the outside of it, you're more likely to have, you know, daylight activity. You know, you find a big rut funnel, you know, where several travel corridors come together, and it really connects two big areas, and it's a really tight bluff funnel or ditch funnel. And you've got scrapes along there. You know, during the pre-rut, those bucks are going to be coming through there, and you will get them at all hours. You'll get them at 3 o'clock in the morning and noon. So it really just depends on where they're located. But of course, a lot of scrapes get worked in the night, no doubt about it.
Yeah, because I when I first started doing mock scrapes, I would just think, all right, cool, I'm gonna scrape the ground, find a branch, spray it, pour it, done. And literally, man, it was so disheartening because it was all nighttime.
Yeah.
And how does, because, you know, Seek One does a lot of that stuff. And I try to model a lot of what I do after them, considering, you know, I grew up 20 minutes from where those guys are from. So, you know, try to support those guys as much as I can.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, yeah. And they're great dudes too. So it's like, I just figured I'll do what they're doing. They're killing 200-inch deer in 3 acres. And it just didn't work, you know, up until I started really realizing what I needed to do. But I got to ask you, why can't y'all use real deer pee?
Yeah, it's just the law of the state of South Carolina. Yeah, no real deer lure. It has to be synthetic. I think they're worried about CWD, chronic waste disease. I think that's what they're worried about. And so, yeah, the rules are the rules, and guys use it. There's a lot of guys that use it, and they sell a ton of it, at the local Sportsman's Warehouse, and guys buy it and put it out. But I'm not about to. I'm not going to, do anything like that. Just gonna stick by, all the rules and regs for sure.
Well, what you've been doing has obviously been working, so I wouldn't change it. Okay, cool. So let's get into the nitty gritty.
Okay.
Where do I want to start? There's so much to it. Okay, the heavy versus light arrow thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I've gone to the extreme end of it, and I've gone to the very heavy side, just ridiculous FOC, 675 grain arrows. And then I've gone lighter, like let's say 400 with, I don't even know how much FOC. You did a test on YouTube that really kind of, in my opinion, put everything to rest, because you had a 650 grain arrow and a 450 grain arrow. And I think there was a half-inch to quarter-inch difference of penetration.
Yep. Yeah, and it was the faster arrow penetrated, the lighter arrow penetrated better. And yeah, I mean, we could talk for 3 hours on this subject. And the first thing is there is science behind this, right? There is science, and we're splitting hairs here. If a guy feels really confident with a 650 grain arrow and a small single bevel broadhead, and penetration is his main thing that he's worried about, and he's shooting 20 yards and in, have at it, brother. Cavemen have killed them with spears, throwing them, with their arms. So knock yourself out. No problem with that. The issue that I have, and a lot of guys that shoot a lot of stuff and a lot more stuff than me, is there's more to killing animals than penetration.
Mm-hmm.
And the penetration that you get with a 650 grain arrow versus a 450 grain arrow is not significant. And nobody can show me in any real world test. Now, you can lay a dead buffalo out and you can shoot it 50 different times, and you're going to hit that dead buffalo different every single time. It's nothing consistent about that. So you may have one that goes in 4 inches and one that passes all the way through him because you hit a shoulder bone, or you hit part of the shoulder bone, or you hit part of the scapula. You're never going to hit him the same. So we developed a mold that was very consistent, and I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm not paid by some company to shoot a particular broadhead or a particular arrow. I want the absolute best setup all around to kill whitetail deer and big mature whitetail deer, because it's so rare to get an opportunity in a deer like that. Everything I can control, I want to have absolutely dialed and switched on. So when I really started looking at it, like you, I've gone to all the extremes. I'm like, I got to have cut on contact, fixed blade head. I got to have 650, 700 grains. I got to have 30% FOC. Started shooting. I was like, man, that doesn't make any sense. I said, I'm shooting 218 feet per second. That arrow's got to be getting there a lot slower. So what we have found is if you shoot a fixed blade, a really well-built fixed blade broadhead, I can understand that. I understand your thinking behind that. You want absolutely no possible failure. Don Higgins and I had a debate about this exact subject, and he's a fixed blade. He would never shoot a mechanical. And so, I understand that thought process. You want penetration, no chance of mechanical failure. And so I can respect that. I get it, and no problem. What guys don't understand is that that fixed blade head can still fail. And how can it fail? That's guys are going, what are you talking about? Okay, when you tune your bow with a fixed blade head, you're shooting with perfect form, right? You're in your backyard, you paper tune it, you're shooting with perfect form. Okay, when you get into a real live hunting situation and you've got to torque your bow under a tree limb to make a 30-yard shot through a little hole, which is a real world situation, you've taken your bow out of tune. So the accuracy of that fixed blade head flying through the air has got more surface area, and it's not going to be as accurate. Okay, so that in my mind, that's a failure. When you're shooting a 1 inch or 1 1/8 inch fixed blade head and you miss the liver or an artery by 1/8 of an inch, that's a failure to me. When you're in the wind and you're trying to make a 40-yard shot and you've got a 15, 20 mile an hour crosswind and that fixed blade head planes and you miss by 6, 8 inches because it planed in the wind, that's a failure to me. But I'm not going to argue that fixed blade head is not going to penetrate better, and I'm not going to argue that the chances of it mechanically failing, or it's not going to mechanically fail. I mean, I've seen broadheads, I won't mention names, that have been on shoulder blades and not penetrated all the way through, and I've done it. So again, I'm being super long-winded here, and we could talk for hours. What I have found is I like a more moderate weight out arrow of about 450 to 480. I like to be in that range. It's very flat shooting. I get tons of penetration. We did a test on that too. We shot 470 versus 650 because I shoot 470 grain total arrows. And we looked at the trajectory out to 60 yards, and at 60 yards, the trajectory of that 650 grain arrow was so bad, our jig that we had, our paper jig at 30 yards, would not pick it up. It shot over the top of the jig. And you can just imagine shooting through the woods, right? With a 650 grain arrow. I mean, the limbs that you're not accounting for, when you've got to zip one at 30 yards through a 6-inch hole, you need for whitetail, you need a flat shooting, fast arrow. So I like to be 295 to 305. I don't really like to be over 305 feet per second. That's starting to get some sporadic stuff going on. So I like a 450 to 480 grain arrow. I like it to be shooting over 390, under 305 feet per second. That's what I have found to be kind of the sweet spot. And I use the same pin from 0 to 30. Most of your whitetail shots are 30 yards and in, and at that speed, you're going to use just one pin, and you don't have to think about it. Deer rolls in, I've ranged that tree, it's 30 yards, he's inside that tree, and I can kill him with my top pin. Easy peasy, easy day. We talk about broadheads. And I get a lot of hate for this, and that's fine. I'm a Rage Trypan guy. I love the Rage Trypan. These are facts. I've shot 30 deer-sized animals in the last 3 seasons. 20 of those are mature bucks, and I've shot them I've lost 2 of them. And one of them was shot with an iron wheel wide, high in the shoulder, didn't get a pass through. I got a picture of that deer about a month later, and it didn't penetrate all the way through. The deer was fine. And I shot a buck in Mexico in the exact same spot, high in the shoulder, with a Rage Trypan, didn't get a pass through, never found it. Everything else has been shot with Rage Trypans. And we're talking inside 70 yards. We're talking 2-inch holes. We're talking blood trails that you don't need a flashlight for. And they're super accurate, and they're super quiet. We set decibel readers up and shot fixed blade heads. That's another thing. Two other points, and I know I'm being super long-winded here, but we set up decibel readers and shot fixed blade heads and mechanical heads over the top of the decibel reader. They're louder. And after the bow sound, the deer actually hears the arrow coming, and that they jump the sound of the arrow. And a mechanical, again, that could be considered another failure, because that fixed blade head is going to be louder, and the deer's going to hear it. Now, is it a lot? No, but we're talking about a game of millimeters here. If he jumps just a millimeter more and you miss that artery, and you miss the top of the lungs because he heard it more, then that can be a problem. Also, the longer your arrow is in flight, the more susceptible it is to human error. So you got a 650 grain arrow, and you've tortured. We're not perfect, right? We're not a hooter shooter. We're not a machine. So everybody puts human error into their shot. You can't get rid of that. And the longer your arrow is in flight, the more human error shows up. So that's it's not going to be a heavier arrow is not going to be as accurate. Can you tune a heavy arrow to be accurate? Sure, you can. But the longer that arrow is in flight, the more susceptible it is to human error. So having said all that, my setup is a Rage Trypan, about 13% FOC. I use the 60 grain shock knocks out the front. Total arrow weight 470 grains. I use 4 heat vanes on the back and a green nocturnal on the back of the arrow, and build them all myself and spin them and tune them. And that's kind of my arrow setup. And yeah, that that's nerdy, and that's a lot, and awful long-winded, but yeah, I'm passionate about, as you can tell, about this stuff.
Yeah, it's like I'm talking to myself right now. Dude, I'm telling you what. So, to touch on all of that, first off, I have to say, I've kind of unfairly been a little against rage, which I shouldn't be, because I've killed 2 deer with it. And let me tell you what, the shortest distance a deer has ever gone was with a rage. It was 20 yards. That sucker piled up like that.
But there is a difference. There's a difference in rages, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'll forget this point. I'm not a fan of their like super wide, the original Rage. I had a lot of problems with those. It's the Tripan. The Rage Tripan is the broadhead. It's titanium ferrule. It's got no collar, and it's got .039 thickness stainless steel blades. Those are the Rages. They're not all Rages are created the same.
Yeah, that's definitely true.
Yeah,
I mean, I used to use the so I used the no collar ones when they came out. Before I got my bow, I used to hunt with a crossbow, just because my wife got it for me for Christmas, and I was very new to it. But I killed 2 deer with it, and the first one went 50 yards, piled up, complete pass through. Never found the bolt, so I don't know what happened to the broadhead. But the second one, like 2 weeks later, dude, like I said, he died 20 yards away from where I shot him, and I mean, unbelievable. And then, so going into actually, vertical bow hunting, I was using Rage. That's all I had. Now, I didn't know anything. I mean, dude, when I took my bow to the shop, I made the cardinal sin of saying, hey, I'm new to this. I don't know anything. Set it up for me, please. And $300 later, I had a 40-pound bow with 325 grain arrows and a 2.3 Rage cut on contact, thinking I'm going to kill anything that shows up. And throughout learning and becoming a nerd in arrow setups and archery and all that, I have wanted to try one with the current setup I have. But I'm a huge fan of that Mega Meat. So when you did that video, it was very interesting to see the comparison between my 3 favorite mechanical broadheads, where you can kind of see, like, the Rage shocked me. It really did. Because I'm thinking, when I first watched it a while back, I'm like, all right, cool. So, I'm on the Mega Meat train. It's going to do better than all of them. It did good, but
it did great. It's a great head. That's a chilling head. That's an awesome head.
But the Rage didn't have as much damage, which shocked me, because all I've ever heard was, oh, Rages don't open, Rages don't do this. And what I've come to learn is the guys saying that, I don't know their arrow setup. They could be shooting a very light arrow. They could have hit it in the wrong spot. There's so many things that could have happened. So I think you might kind of convince me to try.
Man, there's nothing wrong with those Mega Meats, man. That's a great head, especially for whitetail, man. Center mass, you run that. I mean, it's 3 blades, 2-inch cut on all 3 of them. That's a great head. I would have no problem shooting that head. I just like the penetration of the 2-blade head, and I just have so much confidence in that Tripan.
Yeah. Well, in the deer back here, the one I was telling about earlier, I shot him with a Mega Meat, and touching on what you said about arrow flight and sound and all of that, he was 18 yards away, and I let the arrow loose. I watched him duck, and I still hit him good, but the arrow didn't go where I was aiming at. Let's just say that. And back then I, wasn't really that educated on arrow flight. I didn't know my arrows were fishtailing in the wind and all this other stuff. My stuff was totally out of tune. But it still did the job. And I mean, it shredded one of his lungs. I mean, when I gutted him, I pulled it out and it was just ribbons. And I'm like, good Lord, man.
Yeah, they're gruesome.
They are. But it goes to what you're saying about like the heavy arrow versus kind of a little bit lighter arrow. Cause I was shooting a 500 grain arrow then with 14% FOC. And I mean, it did the job, but what I've noticed, because I shoot 60 pounds at 28 inches, what I've noticed is an arrow like that, my bow hates it. I cannot tune it. It will not fly right, all this stuff. So I dropped down to about 445, 450, and that's the perfect weight, at least for me. And
Yeah.
I'm about 16%, so it all worked out. But yeah, man, I mean, all the things you touched on, it's like you said, we could go for 3 hours about this stuff because
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of the Rage Tri-Pan. I've seen what it's done, and yes, I've kind of talked bad on it, but I've never talked bad on that one. It's always the ones that are like the 2.5 inch cut and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And I mean, I've seen good stuff from it, but I think the one you're talking about, the Tri-Pan, but aren't there two different Tri-Pans though? Isn't there one that's
So,
no collar and then one
so
collar?
yeah, so they had the collared ones, and they quit making those, and that's a good head. And now they have the no collar, and that's the one that I shoot now is the no collar. I've still got some of the collared ones, and I will shoot them. But yeah, it's also the angle of those blades are a little more swept back, so the penetration is greater. It's just it's an all around really good head. The problem Rage had is their original heads. They a lot of them broke, even on ribs, and so they got a bad rap. And I would agree. If it was the original Rage, I would not shoot it. But I try and be as open minded as I possibly can. Like the Mega Meat, if I'd like that more, I'd have switched to that. Right then after that test. The Sever, there's a couple things about the Sever that I don't think are as good as the Tri-Pan. But that's also a great head, and a ton of big stuff has been killed with the Severs. So yeah, I mean, to each his own, and guys are going to do what they want to do, and guys are going to hate on fixed blades, they're going to hate on mechanicals, and they're going to hate on light arrows, and they're going to love heavy, and whatever. That it's a very opinionated area. And I try to be as open-minded and leave the ego out of the whole thing. And I shoot a little G5 headlock quiver that costs like 39 or 42 bucks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little cheap quiver, but it's ultra quiet. It's got a really good cam system. It's got a little screw-in piece for the tree. It's ultra quiet, easy, simple to use. And there's $150 quivers out there that got all the bells and whistles, and I don't fool with them. Just that's a quiver that really makes sense to me. So
yeah, I mean, it's good to know that, because like T-Bone will tell you all day he doesn't use like a super expensive sight. I think he told me his sight was like $30, and I blew my mind when he first said that, because I'm like, dude, you're T-Bone, like you're the big dog, and you're using that. And so it's good to hear that you're using just like everyday stuff, because a lot of guys will get on that train about oh, I need the brand new arrows that Victory just made, or some Easton Pro comps that cost $300, and there's nothing wrong with that. Those are all amazing products, but for the average Joe, I mean, I couldn't spend $300 on arrows like that. And
sure.
So it's cool to be like big name guys such as yourself, T-Bone, Jay Maxwell, all of that, using just the same stuff that I would use, So, and especially with the broadhead stuff, I mean, I hope I didn't, say anything out of line with the whole Rage stuff.
No, absolutely. No, you didn't say no. Dude, I hear it all the time, and it's fine. I get it. That's almost as bad as Democrat, Republican, a fixed blade and mechanicals. That's people get their feelings hurt. And hey, I'm up for seeing it. If somebody can come to me and show me where I'm messing up, I'll be the first one to switch. I'll switch tomorrow, because I'm not paid by anybody to shoot anything. I want the most lethal setup, and not just in one area, in all areas, in quietness, in flight, in cutting diameter, in penetration, in everything, in trajectory. I want it all. I want the best in all, or may have to sacrifice a little bit here to get there. But we're hunting specific stuff. We're hunting big mature whitetail deer. What's going to give me the best advantage of that animal?
Yeah, and that's something I think a lot of people really need to start about, because I'll spend all day long, man, like looking up FOC calculators and new broadheads and stuff like that, because I mean, I don't have any broadhead or arrow sponsors or anything like that, so I'm just using what I think is going to work, which is why I said you might have just convinced me to at least try the Rage out, especially that no collar, because I have shot it before, and you were right. They're accurate and they're quiet, because I've shot it up against a couple fixed blades that I've had, and I mean, you can hear it, and I mean, I probably will run like the Q80 Exodus this year. I'll try that one out, Mega Meat, possibly the Rage, maybe even that new Sever. I mean, when I tell you I go down that rabbit hole, it's pretty bad.
No, man, and that's what's fun about our sport is you can try different stuff.
Yeah.
I try, and if I can't make it to the ATA show, I definitely pay attention to all the new stuff that's come out, and I want to get it and try it, and test it, and not bashing people's product, but if I like it and I think it's going to give me a millimeter of a better outcome than what I'm using now, I'll switch and use it and talk about it. So that's it's important to us to when we get these opportunities to seal the deal, and the things you can control, like your gear, that's something you can control. You better have it, dialed. You better understand it, and always ask that, that famous question, why am I shooting this? And if the answer is because somebody on YouTube told me to, that's not a very good answer. You gotta try it out.
Yeah, I was that guy. There's a certain person that, preached heavy arrow setup, and it worked sort of, but if I had the setup I have now, it probably would have worked better. But no, I mean, I've got buddies of mine, that will hit me up all the time. It just happened 2 months ago. A friend of mine was making or building new arrows and stuff, and he was like, "Hey man, what do you think about this broadhead? I'm thinking about going fixed. And what do you think about FOC and arrow weight? And this is my bow setup." And I'm like, "Well, look." 2 hours later, after just completely bringing him in the rabbit hole with me, he tells me, he's like, "Man, I drove you crazy with this, didn't I?" I'm like, "Yeah, you kind of did." I was like, "You're asking me a lot that I can just sit here and talk about for, hours." And he was saying, "Oh, I'm probably just going to go with the original Muzzies or the Rage or, whatever." Because he used the Mega Meat last year, and his setup was a little too heavy. And so he missed a couple times, and he finally got one, and it did amazing. But, it's cool to hear you say, like, give your opinion on certain products, because like you said, you're not getting paid by these guys to say this. So then obviously you're telling the truth,
Yeah. I have no dog in the fight, man. I don't have a reason to say a 470 grain arrow is where you need to be. Why would I say that? I don't sell 470 grain arrows. Now somebody could say, you talk about your camo, and of course I've got a dog in that fight, absolutely. But in the bow I shoot, the arrows, the broadheads, all of that, the rest, the sight, I have no sponsors, none of that. So I completely, and again, we'll change tomorrow. I'll change setups tomorrow, but I've got to see it, and it's got to come from somebody that's, can prove it. I've got to see it, and then I want to take it and test it as well.
Yeah, I mean, to bring it full circle, man, like with the whole camo thing, I think y'all's product really does speak for itself, though. Because it is so different. I've never heard anything bad about it. I've heard bad things other companies, and I'm like, hey, well, I can kind of see that, especially when they're coming out with blue camo, and I'm like, that isn't a deer is going to see you out of everything.
Yeah, that's bad. They see blue like 400 times better than we do. That's why they always talk about the UV. And if your clothing, you need to make sure you wash your stuff in non-UV brightening detergent. Most of the like Dead Downwinds and the phase from the Deer Society guys, all that stuff is non-UV, because when you get UV in your like your wife washes your girlfriend or whatever, you wash your stuff in Tide, and it's got UV brighteners in there. That it puts blue, and the deer see that. They absolutely see it. I mean, we've all been there where we're in the stand and a doe pops out at 150 yards and she eyeballs you, and you're not even moving. It's because you've got UV brighteners in your camo. No question about it.
I've been in that situation, so I know exactly what now. Asio, so I've heard that some camo companies will have UV in, not intentionally, but there's UV in the pattern or the threading or the material or whatever. I mean, do y'all right?
Yeah. So all of our it's in the fabric is where you get it. It's the way the fabric's treated, and all of our fabrics when they're being made or tested under a UV light that shows UV brighteners, and we have no we have no UV brighteners in our fabric. Now, that's not to say that, I've got a wife, had one for 23 years, and every now and again, my hunting vest will get mixed in with the everyday stuff, and I've got a UV light, and I'll put it on there, and it's got brighteners in it. I can see the blue in my stuff, and so you got to be cognizant of that. Because if there's blue camouflage, I would definitely steer people away from that.
Yeah, I saw that and I'm like, there's no way that's going to sell. I mean, maybe for fashion, because, a lot of people just wear camo to wear camo, especially around us. And,
Yep.
And there's nothing wrong with that. But I would never be caught dead in blue camo.
No, that's a mistake.
Well, and it's like you were saying earlier, back before camo was even a thing, you had guys like Fred Bear. I'm sure, the Pope and Young guys and stuff, they weren't wearing camo. They just had regular clothing on. And so it's not like you need it, but it definitely helps. And I feel like if you're going to do it, why not get something that doesn't look like everything else on the shelf? Why not, go with something that's based off a Predator that has natural camo, like God's camo. That's what I call it, because it literally is, So I don't know. I'm just doing a shameless plug for y'all because I love.
No, I appreciate the heck out of that. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, man, I had to. Well, look, I don't want to keep you too long because honestly, we could be sitting here debating arrow stuff and broadhead stuff for 3 more hours.
Sure.
But yeah, man. So before we wrap this up, what's going on with Asio? What's something new? What's going on with Mission Whitetail? We didn't even touch on that.
Yeah, so podcast is growing. I actually filmed one right before we got on here. Had Ben Harrison, that's at the Bow Hunting League. Just had him on for about an hour and a half. Pretty cool. That's a good deal he's got going. So yeah, the podcast is growing. I'm going to have Adam Hayes is going to be doing some hosting with me. He's a real good buddy, and so he's going to be doing some hosting. I'm going to be doing a lot of the hosting myself. Asio, yeah, we've got some new collar designs for bow hunters. We've got a really unique patent pending collar that's coming out that's different than anything on the market. And then we've got some new fabrics this year that are hitting same camouflage pattern, but some quieter fabrics, some more technical fabrics. We've got a new non-metallic. We've got a belt coming that doesn't have a buckle, so it's super quiet. We've got a hand muff coming. We've got some base layers coming. We've got a smaller version of our backpack. We've got a late season vest, which I'm really excited about because you can wear it over our Sherpa jacket. Our Sherpa jacket's really compact bow hunter jacket, but it starts to kind of not hold up when you get under the mid 20s. When you start getting into, it doesn't have the Primaloft insulation in it. It's got the windproof liner. And you can layer under it and get into the mid 20s. But if you put our late season vest on top of that jacket, man, then you're down to zero, and you're still real compact. And so we're excited about that late season vest that's coming.
Dude, I need some of that because I was freezing my balls off last year.
We got you covered, buddy. I promise you won't get cold in this stuff.
I had like 7 layers on, and I'm still sitting there just shivering like crazy. It was terrible. Yep. Like this. Oh man, you touched on something I wanted to talk about. I can't remember. Dang it. It was so important too. Oh crap. Well, that's my monkey brain working right there.
No, I get it, man.
Well, I'm sure I'm gonna remember once we get off of here, but Joe, I can't thank you enough, man. I'm really excited about what's going on with Asio and the fact that y'all support the podcast in the way that you do. We have that promo code, SEBH15 saves, or no, I'm sorry, SEBH10 saves 10% on y'all's website with everything. And you guys have that Father's Day thing going on, don't you?
Yeah, we do. That'll be going from now till Sunday night of Father's Day. And we started a little early. So guys that wanted to get dad stuff or wives that want, they'd have plenty of time for the shipping and all that to come in before Father's Day. So yeah, running that sale now. And, AsioGear.com is the website, and that's our Instagram. And then my personal stuff is Joe Miles Hunting on Instagram and Facebook. And yeah, guys, any questions, I'm happy to hear, talk, debate, whatever we want to talk about. I love talking deer and most evenings and doing it. So happy to engage with anybody that wants to talk whitetail.
Yeah, man, this has been great. So you're gonna kill me, but I just remembered what I was gonna ask you.
Fire away, buddy.
So have you heard of stealth strips?
I have.
Okay. Have y'all considered working or collaborating with them to get an Asio gear stealth strip made?
So me and is it Lou? Is that the guy that owns it? We have played phone tag for about 2 months, and
Okay.
I've got about 15 other guys that are begging for there to be Asio stealth strips, and I'm one of them. You know, I want to wrap some stands and some
Yeah.
sticks and some other stuff. So we've got to make that happen. If you talk with him, please tell him that we're in. We will license the pattern to him free of charge. We just want some of the strips, and so yeah, I'd love to do that. I need to follow. We're so busy right now. It's hard for me to remember, but I'm gonna email myself when we get off here and remember to call him and see if we can't get that going, because I'd love to have some of that before season.
Oh yeah. I mean, I've got my climber half wrapped up in I think it's like Realtree a strata or something like that. I got it months ago, and being lazy and all, I just finally started doing it. But it got me thinking, especially when we were talking, and it's like, dude, if Asio came out with something like that, or partnered up with Lou and all of that, that would be amazing, because
Yeah,
then
yeah, we
you're
got to
invisible,
do that.
Dan's invisible. I mean, you get, and I
Good to
saw
go.
y'all
Yeah,
got this. What was it, the Matthews now that's got the Asio pattern on it?
yeah, we got it dipped in the Asio, and it looks good. God, it
Dude,
looks so good.
y'all about to make all this like the Predator out there, just invisible.
Well, we want to help, man. We want to help, and we love it. So we're down for that for sure.
Awesome. Well, I'll reach out to Lou. We're friends on Facebook. I've never talked to him, but I follow his stuff all the time. So I'll send him a message like, "Hey, I just talked to Joe. He said he's down. We need to get this going." Like,
Yes, please do. Yeah, I'd love to. Yep, love to get it going. So
uh,
thank you.
yeah, of course. Well, look, dude, I don't want to keep you too long. This episode, man, I had a lot of fun. I need to get you
Me
back on.
too. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Anytime, man. I'd love to come back. I'm very, very thankful to be on here, and yeah, I look forward to doing it again. Thank you very much.
yes, sir. No problem. We'll work it out. We'll make it happen.
All right, buddy. Sounds good.
All right, man.
Take care.